everyone, and welcome to the very first intro episode of Those Millennial Pediatricians. I'm Dr. Deshna.
And I'm Dr. Aniksha.
And we are pediatric residents in our last year residency.
Woo!
And we are so excited to be launching this podcast to talk about all things kids, parenting, and general children's health. And so kind of getting into why we are starting this podcast. So one of the overarching issues I saw as a resident was seeing parents leaving their pediatrician appointment, basically wanting more. So more info, more time with their pediatrician, and just left with more questions that are not, there's no time to answer all of these concerns in a 15 to 20 minute visit. And so what we hope is that this podcast will be more of a guide and a supplement for the times in between your pediatrician appointment, and often on topics that aren't always discussed regarding your child's general well-being and health in all the stages from birth to adolescent.
Yeah, for sure. We also know that information on the internet can be so hard to digest, or you might just not even know what the most accurate or up-to-date information is. We're talking about those TikToks that you're not quite sure what to make of. So the goal of this podcast for us is also to make this knowledge more accessible and using evidence-based sources so that you can be the most informed when it comes to your kids. On that note, our name is Those Millennial Pediatricians because, well, we're both millennials for starters, but more importantly, we're noticing more millennials, more people our age starting families who might find this information useful and even more relatable than what's currently out there. So what can you guys kind of expect from us? So each week we'll cover a different topic that's relevant to parents and kids and families. Sometimes we'll break down some myths, maybe share some tips, or even answer questions from listeners.
And with that, we also plan to bring in guest experts. So whether that's pediatric subspecialists, we'll bring nutritionists, therapists, and even parents who have their own unique kind of stories to share. So going into the next topic, we figured you should know a little bit about the hosts of this podcast you'll listen to. So I'm Deshna, as I said before, and a little bit more about me. I'm a third year pediatric resident in Southern California. And so that means I'll be graduating soon, and hopefully I will be a practicing general pediatrician. And when I'm not in the hospital, I really value life outside of medicine and spending time outdoors, cooking, and starting this podcast with Aniksha.
Yeah, I also live in Southern California as a third year pediatric resident. Our fun fact is that Desha and I are both in the same residency program, trauma bonded over several nights, lots of long shifts at work. So very excited to be in our last year. I am also planning to practice as a general pediatrician in the area after graduation. I think this is definitely an area of passion for both of us. And in my free time, I also like my life outside of medicine. So love spending time outdoors with my dog, going to concerts, cooking, and all of that fun stuff.
And on that note, how can you connect with us? We want this to be a two-way conversation. So we always welcome any questions or suggestions. Our email is thosemillennialpedspod@gmail.com, and the millennial is with 2 N's. And we also are starting a TikTok at Those Millennial Peds Pod, also with 2 N's. And then our Instagram is Those Millennial Pediatricians with 2 N's. So do not forget that, because I misspelled it the first time and I had to create a whole nother one. So 2 N's, don't forget.
Part of being a millennial is eventually learning how to spell millennial.
There you go.
But, it's easier to spell boomer and Gen Z. So, it's a little bit harder for us.
There you go. Give us some grace.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll plug our next episode. We'll be diving into what we feel like is the scariest time for first-time parents, or even seasoned parents, honestly. It's the newborn period, also known as the 4th trimester. So we'll kind of talk about the most common concerns that come up in the first few weeks right after your baby is born. That's everything from feeding to how to take care of yourself to when to call your doctor versus going to the emergency room.
Yeah, I think this will be a really important episode. This is one that we hear a lot about from new parents of our patients or even like our friends. So I think this will be a really great episode. But thanks so much for listening to our first episode. We made it. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes.
And for future reference, if you find our episodes helpful, please leave a review, share it with other parents. We'll likely get this podcast onto Spotify and Apple Music, anywhere you can listen to your favorite podcasts. And eventually we'll start recording videos as well. And we hope to get it on YouTube as well if, you happen to not be on the road and want to have kind of a visual. And with that, I guess we'll see you at the next episode. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.